We are following on from the story of the man who was born blind, who Jesus healed, and how he was thrown out of the synagogue, and how Jesus went and found him, and how he confronted the Pharisees about their blindness, their own personal blindness. And we've now reached John's Gospel chapter 10, and the consequence of that event is spoken of in this discourse about the shepherd and his flock. John 10 verse 1. I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name and he leads them out. And when he's brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them. And his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they'll never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, I tell you the truth. I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep, so when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he's a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. I must bring them also, and they too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. The reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life, only to take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. All these words the Jews were again divided. Many of them said, he's demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him? But others said, these are not the sayings of a man possessed by the demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? We could see from this account that this is an event which runs hard on the heels of what's just finished in chapter 9. Jesus has healed the blind man and sought him out and reinstated him. And at the same time, an argument with the Pharisees provoked again. So, because these two run close together, you could ask the question, who is this discourse of the Good Shepherd addressed to? And there's no difficulty in answering that. It's addressed to the Pharisees. Because right at the end of John 9, Jesus is addressing the Pharisees. Some Pharisees heard him say, are we still blind? And he said, yes, basically, because you claim to be sighted, you still contain your sin. And straightway he says, I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter, and so on. So he's addressing here the Pharisees who were challenging him. And we can clarify that and be absolutely certain that is the case, because when you get to the end of the passage which I've just read, at verse 19, at these words, the Jews were again divided. They were divided before, and they're divided again now. Divided before, why? Because some said that he was from God, because he was performing miracles to heal the blind man, and some said that he was a lawbreaker, Sabbath breaker, and therefore not from God. They were divided at that point, and the same Jews are divided here too. So this follows on from the healing of the blind man, the shepherd and his flock. And in that context, we can begin to understand it and see what this is about. So, imagine the situation. Here's Jesus. He's just restored the blind man to fellowship with God, because the blind man has been asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? And the blind man, or the sighted man now, said, Lord, I believe. And he worshipped him. And Jesus points out that for judgment he's come into the world. The blind will see and believe in him, and the sighted do not believe in him and do not see. And it's at this point that Jesus brings out this idea of the shepherd and his flock. Now, we've seen continuously Jesus talks in metaphors and pictures, because it's the only way to grapple with some very deep and powerful spiritual truths, the linking together of pictures and ideas from high up to, in a spiritual sense, to an earthly sense, to connect those two things together, to give an insight which pure words by themselves cannot give. So, with this division in mind, the idea of dividing those who accept Jesus from those who don't, this is where the shepherd and the flock come in. I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. Remember who he's talking to here. He's talking to the Pharisees. I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, is a thief and a robber. Now, who's he referring to here? He's referring to a typical situation where sheep are corralled in a large sheep pen, and there is a gate that comes in, and there are people who will come in by the gate. They open the lock and they come through, and they tend and look after the sheep. There are those, maybe at night time, who come in, climb over the fence to steal a sheep and take the sheep out, a thief and a robber. Now, all of that is the picture that you have in mind. What's the point of the picture? The point of the picture is, this is Jesus talking about the Jews and the Pharisees. Without doubt, he's saying, you are the ones who are the thieves and the robbers, and you are not looking after the sheep. Remember, Jesus went off and found this man because he had been thrown out of the synagogue. He had been excommunicated, and Jesus comes to look after him. It's a picture of a shepherd and sheep. When he confronts the man and says, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man confesses freely that he does. The sheep recognizes the shepherd, says Jesus. That's how I know who my sheep are. I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way. So he's talking here, the man who does not enter the sheep pen. He's talking about the leaders here, or the fake leaders of the people. The people are those who are likened to the sheep, who need guidance, who need instruction, who need help. But the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in some other way, not the direct route, the way in which you have usurped the role of the true shepherd. And if anyone comes into the sheep pen not by the gate, not in a straightforward way, not in the way in which it's through me, essentially, then you will be considering yourself as the thief and the robber. That's the only other person who comes into the sheep pen. That's the shepherd or the thief and the robber. And you are thieves and robbers, he says, referring to the Pharisees. The man who enters the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. So, it's a legitimacy here. It's an openness. It's an idea of coming in a way which is open and transparent to all, because only the shepherd has the right to enter in that way. The Pharisees, who claimed to be shepherds of the sheep, were in fact no more than thieves and robbers. They showed no care or concern about the sheep and have no interest in them. They're quite happy to put someone out of fellowship if they transgress the rules as they see them. So, lack of concern, lack of compassion here. And the climbing in some other way means not coming in through the gate, not coming in through the way in which, as Jesus points himself out to be the gate himself. You know, you are a person who comes in to the sheep pen, but you haven't come through me. You haven't directed your attention through me. You haven't accepted who I am, and therefore you've come in over the fence, and your connection with the sheep is not legitimate. You haven't come the right route. You are an illegitimate abuser of the sheep. That's his idea here. A thief and a robber, someone who only cares about themselves. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. And here is a shift to the nature of the sheep themselves. The sheep listen to the voice of the shepherd, and the shepherd talks directly to the sheep. He calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. So there's a connection between the true shepherd and the sheep. The sheep recognize the shepherd, and the shepherd recognizes the sheep. He calls his own sheep by name and leads them out, and when he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. Remember the context. Remember what's just happened. Remember the blind man who can now see. Remember how the Pharisees challenged him, and how they told him to deny Jesus Christ, and how they should instead, he should follow them and follow what they considered to be the Mosaic way. But he did not. He refused what they said and denied their authenticity. He claimed that Jesus was clearly a person from God, and he would rather worship him, and indeed he did. He refused the teaching of the Pharisees and the Jews, and he accepted the teaching of Jesus. And so the sheep listen to the voice of Jesus. They do not listen to the voice of the Pharisees. Now, this is very significant and important, because it seems to me that there is a resonance, it's the best term I can come up with, a kind of a resonance where you recognize the voice, that what Jesus says is true and right and correct, or you don't. And you recognize that what the Pharisees were saying was selfish and mean and cruel and bitter and callous in throwing people out of the synagogue. They were only interested in preserving their own position, and you can recognize that. The man himself, he is the archetypical sheep, the blind man, who recognized Jesus for who he is, as a man sent from God, and recognized the Pharisees for what they were, which were thieves and robbers. Claiming to look after the sheep, they were in fact hurting and destroying the sheep. That's the problem here, and that's the difficulty here. And Jesus says, my sheep will recognize my voice. And they do. It's kind of instinctive because it's done from a spiritual perspective. Those who have ears to hear will hear what Jesus has to say. And Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. That's where they do not recognize a stranger's voice. They don't recognize your voice. He has rejected what you had to say. But they didn't understand, because the picture of the sheep and the shepherd had confused them. They didn't understand that they were being likened to the thieves and the robbers, and that Jesus was the only true shepherd. Therefore, Jesus, they didn't understand what he was saying, so therefore Jesus said again, and he redoubted, changed the figure of speech to make it clearer for them. I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So if you want it clear and plain, I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. And the sheep did not, all who ever came before me were thieves and robbers. You scribes and Pharisees who were before me, you are the thieves and the robbers, and my sheep do not listen to you. They listen to me. And that is the judgment which is made here. And that I have a connection, therefore, a strong connection, where I recognize my sheep and my sheep recognize me. And they will not follow a stranger's voice. So no matter what you tell them, no matter what you say, because your words are not the words of truth, they do not resonate with the sheep do not recognize you. This blind man, blind from birth, he does not recognize you, and he disagrees with you, and he disputes with you, but he recognizes my voice, and he follows me. So that's the context here. He will come in and go out. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. And you come in over the wall. You don't enter through me. You don't accept me or recognize me. Whoever enters through me will be saved. In other words, acknowledge me and accept that I am sent from God, and therefore follow what I say and put it into practice. That's what it means to enter through me. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The idea of pasture, of course, is a safe place to graze, to be nourished, to find home, to find security. And the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. The contrast here is huge. The thief does come to kill and destroy. The thief comes to take the sheep and to take it off for slaughter and to eat and feed off the sheep. But I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. And that idea of having life and having it to the full is another reoccurring theme within the Gospels. The idea that having life and the fullness of life, not just a bare life, and the idea of life being something which is beyond the physical, but which is also spiritual, which has a personal spiritual satisfaction that you understand and feel that it's a bit like the bread of life. Not ordinary bread might give you physical sustenance, but the bread of life, the word of God, gives you a spiritual sustenance. It's this life to the full is the spiritual dimension of life, where you have purpose and meaning, which is focused and centered upon God, and feeling that you are in the right place, doing the right thing, and part of the family of God. Or in this case, part of the shepherd's sheepfold. I am the good shepherd, says Jesus quite explicitly. Now there's a change in image here, in metaphor. Before it was the idea that I am the gate for the sheep, so that the sheep come in and through me, and that's different from, and it's a gate also for which the teachers and those who look after the sheep would come through and accept and acknowledge that I am the central via way, the means, the way in which to travel through and between is the way in which I am. I am the only way, the truth, and the life is another way of putting that. That's what the central gate is. You have to come in through this particular route, and I am the route through which you come. My teaching is the route which you need to follow. But not only am I the route and the method, but I'm also the good shepherd. Now here we switch the metaphor from being the gate to the shepherd. And it's important that this is seen as something quite separate and quite important. I am the good shepherd. Why is he the good shepherd? Because the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. That's the fundamental quality of the good shepherd. The good shepherd is someone who looks after the sheep. That's what shepherds do. Shepherds look after sheep, make sure they don't, if they get into trouble or difficulty, pain and distress, the shepherd comes and hauls them out of the ditch or puts them right and sorts them out. He looks after the sheep. That's what he does. And the good shepherd, the shepherd who goes beyond normal shepherding, the good shepherd is the one who will lay down his life for the sheep, who puts himself at risk for the sheep, and his own life is on the line. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. The hired hand is just someone who cares little for the sheep. Likening again to the scribes and Pharisees as hired hands. When they see the wolf coming, they abandon the sheep and run away. When the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it, the man runs away because he's a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. There is no real connection, no love for the sheep. This is something which Jesus himself is quite different about. There is a genuine love and concern for those who follow Jesus and centre their lives on Jesus, as this blind man centred his life upon Jesus, and that's why Jesus went and sought him out when he heard that he'd been thrown out of the synagogue. So the shepherd loves the sheep, cares for the sheep, looks after the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. This deep, strong connection. They look to me for leadership, for guidance, for direction in knowing what to do, and they trust me to look after them and to save them. So this image of shepherds and sheep is one that goes back to the Old Testament and to the Psalms, of course, and it's one which illustrates the connection between God and his people, between Jesus and those who believe in him. So that's an important element here. So, to move on, I have other sheep. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. Well, this is a prefiguring here of the sacrificial nature of Jesus' love for his disciples and for those who trust in him. It's a prefiguring of course, the crucifixion. And what's interesting at this point is that Jesus knows at this time beforehand exactly what's going to happen. None of this is taking Jesus by surprise. And the idea that Jesus was just overtaken by events is clearly wrong and cannot be the case when Jesus lays it out very clearly that I will lay down my life for the sheep. Powerful statement, but one which knows the future as it's coming because it is already anticipated, planned for, and a requirement of what the shepherd does. So the shepherd might go out and face, as David did in those old days, lions, wolves, bears, whatever the wild animals were which would attack the sheep. He used to face those dangers on the behalf of the sheep. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And it's impossible that Jesus could not have had that particular picture in mind from Psalm 23. I am the good shepherd. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep as the good shepherd would risk everything to ensure the safety of the sheep. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen, and I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. That's an unusual verse, and it's one which is pointing maybe to something else beyond what we have here. Who are these other sheep and other men? Well, it's been speculated in different ways. The most common speculation, I think, on this matter is that we're talking about Jews and Gentiles. The sheep of this shepherd are the Jewish people, who are the people of God, but the implication here is there are people outside the people of God, people who would be considered Gentiles by this. Maybe people like the Samaritans who were mentioned earlier, people that Jesus considered were outside the people of Israel. He wishes to bring those people together into a single sheep pen. Now that's a remarkable vision here. In one verse, Jesus is suggesting the entire world is something that he has a concern for, not limited merely to the Jewish nation or to the Jewish people, but to everybody. That's the implication here. People beyond this particular nation, people beyond Israel, people in a far-flung countries who know nothing of this situation at the moment. And that is an extraordinary vision to bring forward, if that's what this is about. It seems to me that there's little else that it could be about, and I can't imagine who he might have in mind here other than Gentiles as such, certainly people outside the Jewish faith. And that's an extraordinarily wide vision. I have other sheep that are not of this sheep pen. Well, those may be people of a different time as well. I must bring them also. And they too will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. A uniting of many different kinds of people or different sheep from different areas brought together. The uniting power of Jesus here is something which is embedded in this idea of one shepherd and one flock, and that all those who look to the same shepherd are by definition united together in that accord. But then he goes on to say, the reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. There's obedience here. And the Father loves the Son because the Son does what the Father's will is. That's a powerful and important message for us too. That Jesus is only here to carry out the will of the Father. He's mentioned this many times too. But the Father, the reason my Father loves me is that I lay down my life only to take it up again. And the idea of sacrifice here, which is a difficult thing to do because all sacrifices are difficult, but this is the ultimate of sacrifice, to lay down your life, to give up everything that you have, including life itself. There is no greater sacrifice than that. And what's more, he says that this is not something which will be forced upon me. I could evade it. I could avoid it. No one else can take my life from me. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord, which means that it is my will that it should take place. And it's my will because it is the Father's will. And it is the alignment of those two wills. To align your will to the will of God is what makes you one with God. And God loves you for it, says Jesus here. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord, and I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. Now that's, again, an interesting thing. You need authority to lay down your life. You need authority to have your life brought back again or to be resurrected again. And the authority comes from God the Father himself. Powerful ideas, way beyond what any ordinary person might even think of thinking about, never mind planning or putting into operation. The idea that you have authority to lay down your life, and he is planning therefore to do so. And he's planning to lay down his life and has it all planned out to know exactly how and when it will take place. But he also has authority by God to come back to life, to resurrect life. I have authority, he says, not only to lay down my life, but to take it up again. Something that no one else has authority to do under any circumstances. I have authority to lay down my life. I have authority to take it up again. And this authority, this command, I received from my Father. Now, you can imagine that the reception for that would be utter astonishment. What on earth are you talking about? Laying down your life, taking it back up again. None of this would make any sense to the Pharisees or whatever. At these words, the Jews were again divided previously, of course, because they were divided at whether he was a lawbreaker or whether he was sent from God. Many of them said he's demon-possessed and raving mad. Why listen to him? You get that idea on a number of occasions, and it's happened previously. But the idea is simply this. We don't understand what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense to us. The words you're using are beyond normal words, normal rationality, normal understanding. We can't follow you or make sense of what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense to us, Jesus, when you say that I lay down my life only to take it up again. What does that mean? Now, we stand on this side of a great boundary, the boundary of the crucifixion and the resurrection. So we know exactly what he's talking about. It makes sense to us because we can see it in history, in the past. Even if we don't believe in the resurrection, or we do believe in the resurrection, at least we know what he's talking about because that's the historical record that's been sent to us. Right. But here they had no idea that he was talking about coming back to life after being killed. And if they did, it was just mad talk. No one in the history of the world has ever done that. It's impossible. No one, no great prophet, Moses, Elijah, no one has done this, laying down their life to take it up again. It doesn't make any sense. It's never been done. No one has even thought about it, never mind talked about it openly. And so these words divided everybody. Many of them said he's demon-possessed, he's raving. Why listen to him? Let's come away. Others said these are not the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. After all, can a demon open the eyes of the blind? So again, they're left with this perplexity. They're left with this paradox. They're left with impossible words from an impossible person who has done impossible things that could only be seen in the light of God being the one who sent him behind all of this. And yet, here are words which we don't understand, which don't make any sense to us. And what's on top of that, he's a lawbreaker and a Sabbath breaker as well. So the division here is powerful. No one can sit on the fence when it comes to this. You're in one camp or the other. Either if you make some sense of what Jesus is saying, or you write him off as a charlatan, as a madman, as a fool who is raving, whose words make no sense. That was the camp of the Pharisees. But for others, such as the man born blind, he was the good shepherd who has looked after him, and therefore the sheep will follow him wherever he goes.